just want to go to Robert Costa because he has some new information. He just spoke with Donald Trump on the record. Robert?
I just spoke with former President Donald Trump on the phone. I asked the former president about his reaction to the news. He said that it's a shock to the country. It's a shock to the country, but he believes it's good for the country to see President Biden decide to step aside. He believes that President Biden was pressured out of the race. I asked him if he's willing to debate Vice President Harris. He said, I'm not sure she is going to be the Democratic nominee. He's waiting to see how the Democratic race emerges. He has not made any statement, he said, or conclusion about who the Democratic nominee will be, but he is thinking through the race. I asked him, will this change how you proceed with your own presidential campaign? He said, absolutely not. This is about policies. She carries, if she's the nominee or anyone else carries, the Biden record. He said to me in CBS News, he is running against the Biden administration, whether it's Vice President Harris or not. He expressed, in a sense, not sympathy for President Biden in any way, but he, as a political observer, believes that the Democrats took out one of their own with this pressure campaign. And he said that he, at this point, is just waiting to see what emerges in the Democratic Party. He said, I am going to run against what he called the worst presidential administration in history. He believed, in his view, that President Biden's not up for the job. So he said, quote, to CBS News just now, that it's good for the country that he's getting out. But he said this is a total shock to the country to have a president forced out by his own party. And he kept insisting the race continues as is in his view.
It's interesting to hear from Donald Trump and that exclusive interview that you just had with him. I wonder, though, how worried the campaign is. Donald Trump ran against a woman, Hillary Clinton, in 2016. It was personal. He called her nasty. He called her a lot of other words. I wonder whether those same types of attacks would work in 2024. There will be a different dynamic running against a black woman.
It was evident on my conversation, and it was a conversation, not an exclusive interview. It was a conversation I had with former President Trump on the phone. I called him up. And what's evident to me, I just spoke to Donald Trump Jr. within the last hour on text message and spoke by phone to former President Trump. What this country should be prepared for, based on what I heard from former President Trump, who I've known for many years as a reporter, have covered him extensively. What's on the horizon now is political war. It is going to be rougher than anything we've seen. His tone on the phone, his description of what's coming ahead on the horizon, even though he didn't pledge in any way to debate Vice President Harris because he kept noting that she's not the nominee formally, so who should he debate? Why should he commit to debating her when I pressed him on the issue in our conversation? But he kept going on, this is the worst administration. He said he went on his position on immigration, that in his view they have destroyed the border. They need to be held accountable. I'm going to hold whoever runs against me accountable for what's going on at the border. And he went on and on that particular issue. And he said he believes on the issue of the economy and the immigration, he can win this election, whether it's Vice President Harris as the nominee or someone else. And he expressed a lot of confidence that his searing message and attacks on the Democratic record will be effective. And so this is a moment where Democrats are coming together, but Republicans clearly, based on my conversation with the former president, the Republican nominee, and his closest allies in the last couple hours, they are preparing to ramp up their attacks because as Democrats see this moment as one of togetherness, perhaps rallying around Vice President Harris, it should be noted that Republicans do see this publicly and especially behind the scenes as a moment of weakness for the Democratic Party, where there's a soft underbelly, politically speaking, for them to come in and attack the Democratic ticket as there is this moment of transition.
You know, I can remember the Bush-Kerry race and when John Kerry became the nominee. And I remember talking to a top official in the Bush campaign, and that official is saying to me, you know, only about this small slice of America really knows who John Kerry is. And as a Washington reporter, I said, what? He's a war hero. Everybody knows who John Kerry is. He's been in the Senate. He's been a prominent figure. And they said, no, and we're going to spend the next couple of months telling everybody what to believe about John Kerry, which became some of the most brutal attacks against a war hero, the Swift boat veterans, just to recall that campaign of late. It is true not many people, even though she is the vice president of the United States, know a lot about Kamala Harris. And so will begin what is an effort, as our campaigns are. They are political war, as you said, to paint her in a way from a campaign, the Donald Trump campaign, which is good at this type of political warfare.
And they've got a 4-week head start.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have a convention for 4 weeks. And if she faces a challenge, she can't go out there and explain herself, and the Trump campaign can.